All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you have had an opportunity, had an opportunity to grab a refreshment, make a new connection, say hi to maybe somebody that you're already familiar with. This panel that we are about to dive into is one that is very urgent, just given how much AI or how quickly AI is evolving in our world today. And this is the AI employer brand. I'm very excited to welcome, Katie Burke, who is the Chief People Officer at Harvey. And we have Alex Buder Shapiro, who is the Chief People Officer at Jasper AI. Thank you for joining us.
We're so excited.
Amazing. Okay, so something that I want to dive into, just stating it off the top, because the conversations thus far is really focused on the fact that it feels like employer brand is about the whole human. It is about those connections, people to people, feeling seen, feeling heard. And while I'm certainly a fan of AI, I know that the perspective of some people is like, well, it's not human. And so I'm curious about what you both see as sort of the role of AI in employer brand, given that maybe the perspective of AI's capacity to be human feels limited at the moment, maybe.
You want me to start?
Sure.
So hi, nice to see you all. First of all, it's so nice to have employment brand people together in a room. It's just like good vibes all around, don't you think? We needed this, we missed this, so thanks for getting us together.
Of course.
Second, so I spent 12 years at HubSpot prior to joining Harvey. And so when I started at HubSpot, we were 400 people, left when we were 8,000 people. Had an amazing run there and was very lucky to build a very human-centric employer brand, which we're very lucky to have been a part of. And I would say the best way I would describe it is I still think AI companies can very much be human-centric. And I would just say if HubSpot, which to be clear, it did not feel anything like this at the time, but if it was a casual jog in Central Park, AI is an all-out sprint. And so the best way I can describe it is I think that there is massive room for humanity in AI and employer brands. And in fact, I think it's necessary. And I would just say, however long you think you have to build it, cut that timeline, whatever it is. I don't know what number, I'm not going to judge you. Whatever that number is you just thought of, cut it in half, then probably cut it in half again. And so I would just say, that's the expectation of change. And so if you are someone who are like, we build it one market at a time, we build it one team at a time, we have a rollout of values, we then cascade the values, we've all done this before many times, that playbook will leave you in the dust. And so I think the biggest difference is not the humanity, it's the speed.
That was very well said, because we were just comparing notes on the all-out sprint of working as HR people in AI companies. I also think, so you would start with a very deeply human-centered proposition, but I think AI is actually part of how you are able to make that pace. So I think AI gives you the ability to amplify and sort of move quickly and bring that speed and that scale to what you're doing.
Yeah.
I guess I'd be curious to compare notes with you, but I also feel more and more now like our value proposition becomes AI, because what employees are often looking for their employer to do is teach them how to use AI. So I say people come to Jasper to work in AI and with AI. And it's my job to follow through on that second half of that proposition and ask people, what does it mean to transform your own career with AI? And that's, I think, going to be increasingly asked of all of us.
Absolutely. So I think that's a really great segue. When I think about just even your roles prior to where you are now in AI companies, and Katie, you're talking about this speed. People are kind of like, oh, we've got time. But more and more it feels like the likelihood that our companies become AI companies to some degree, even just the capacity or how much we are using AI, that's going to be more and more. And perhaps next year when we do this, people are like, well, actually, I think I kind of work at an AI company now. And so what I'm thinking is what specifically is AI touching when you think about your employer brand strategy? You're sitting in a meeting with your team and you're like, great, here's where we're really needing to narrow down, or we need more speed, or we need more capacity. What are you picking, and where is AI actually best in your employer brand strategy?
So I think you just said something important, which is Alex and I work at AI companies, so do all of you. Yeah. Whether it's in your name or your title, or whether that's how you traditionally define the brand, you all do for all the reasons that Alex just mentioned. And so I would just say, as far as the employer brand, part of it starts with your promise to candidates, because every single candidate is wondering how AI is going to change the current role that they're applying for or their internal mobility opportunities. So regardless of before you even think about any content, think about your employee value proposition, and it has to reflect, okay, what does AI do to this job I'm applying for? Regardless of whether you're a mining company, a publishing company, it really does not matter. And so it's how will AI factor into my current role, but also how will AI change my job prospects or career prospects at your organization in 3 years? That's the fundamental place to start the question. And I think what most people start with is, could we use AI as a bot to answer our benefits questions? And the answer is like, yes, you absolutely should do that. Please do that. If you are still wasting time responding to the same benefits questions 8 times, you are doing it wrong. However, that is not the fundamental question that if you are an HR leader, that is incremental, not transformational. And so the best way to think about it is start with the promise you're making to your candidates and your employees. And if the AI answer, if you find yourself, when people ask that question, you find yourself doing that thing where you kind of sit back in your chair and you're like, many things, transformation. If you find yourself using words that you don't otherwise use, and you're like the connections, the synergies, all the M&A words that everyone hates, you're not doing it well. And so you need to be able to look with a completely straight face and answer that question, because your candidates are going to not just expect it, but they're going to actively choose companies where they have a great answer to that question.
Yeah.
Or companies, for me, it's that there's companies that they're actually a part of answering that with you.
Yes.
And so I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate about talking to people leaders about AI is because I want us to be leading the charge. I want the adoption of AI to be a really human-centered activity. And so I want to be able to say to a candidate, I don't actually know the limits of what's possible in your job. I just know that I have to create the environment and give you the tools and the support, and that you're going to tell me what capable is. And so the benefits bots, that was a great starting point because people were building that tooling. But the really powerful unlock comes when somebody says, I have a different way of doing my work. I can reimagine this entirely. And they actually help you see what your company can become. And that's the dialogue that I try to have with candidates is like, blank page, reimagine your job for me. Do you have the tools and capabilities to do that? Come here, I think I have those.
Yeah, so this reminds me a lot of the New Talent Playbook panel that we had a little bit earlier, where we're talking about how we are rewriting, reimagining what we think about what a career looks like. And when we think about AI, it's similar where you're looking at, okay, well, it's not just this set job description. We're thinking about skills mapping. We're thinking about what that means in terms of where a person can grow. And you're naming something that I think is big, which is around mindset. Somebody coming in and saying, I am autonomous, I have agency, I have the ability to think about what more I can do here. And so when you're looking for a new candidate today, they are applying or you meet them somewhere, like, what are you looking for? What skill sets does somebody need to have to be able to fit well into this new sort of structure of work?
I love that you called it mindset, because the one we've been playing around with is this idea of a beginner's mindset.
Yeah.
So how do you bring that curiosity to the work that you're doing? How do you see yourself as having that agency and empowerment to reimagine how work gets done? And I think trying to ask people and really distilling down almost in that first principles way, what is my job trying to achieve, and like what if I 10x that, what would that look like? Yeah. That's the kind of skill we've been playing around with. We're redoing our values. So I'm out there doing interviews with people and asking like, what makes it work? And I keep hearing this curiosity over and over again that I'm trying to really distill.
Yeah.
I very much agree with that. I would say in general, what you see from a lot of candidates is they think of AI as cilantro. It's like a topping. You could kind of give or take it. It may or may not stick around, but you're probably not going to notice it. And I think the best way to think about it is it's the enchilada. Like, it is the main course. And so what we're looking for, to Alex's point, is not someone who's like, yes, thank you so much. I'm very comfortable with AI. I wrote my cover letter in Claude, so thank you so much. I'll be there. What I'm looking for is someone who's like, look, let me tell you about times when I've navigated uncertainty. Let me tell you, I am not an AI expert. Do not go into an interview and claim to be an AI expert if you're not. But instead, show examples of where you're totally comfortable with change. Every single person in this room, if you've navigated employer brand, you know how to deal with change. And so that's what you want to focus on, is exactly what Alex said, which is that mindset to go, how can I embrace this? And I think most people think 90% of their jobs will stay the same, and then the 10% is the cilantro. It's the exact opposite. So like, flip it, reverse it, change the mindset that goes along with it. And then it's a whole lot easier to go, okay, cool. What am I open to changing, and what am I experimenting with? And where am I okay with being a beginner and starting from that place of, I actually don't know it all, so what can I rethink about my current job?
Yeah. I'm hungry, and also, so okay, Katie, you bring up something that's very big, because I'm hearing, yes, we have employees or job seekers who are coming in and they're doing the cilantro AI approach, but we also see this from organizations, and it is really daunting. I mean, we're all on LinkedIn, so we can be honest here. It's like, everybody's just like a little sprinkled there and a little sprinkled there, and it's just like, oh, stop, it's so cringy. Like, what is it that you're actually doing? And like, what is AI actually doing for you? And like, I'll be honest myself, like that's some of the pressure of posting on LinkedIn. You want to be authentic. You want us to share something that's real. And so I think that what I'm saying is that AI can either hurt or be very helpful to an employer brand. And so I'm curious about how you make that distinction. Like, when is AI maybe not necessarily good for an employer brand when everybody thinks you just need to be saying it, doing it, but like there's a disconnect? Like, what does that look like?
I'm a big fan of celebrating failure and experimentation. So the best way to think about it is, the other day, speaking of LinkedIn, someone tagged me on LinkedIn with an example that I shared on a podcast where, when we were at HubSpot, we used generative AI to analyze our employee survey results, which I highly recommend. It's a great use case for AI. It helps, pull out summaries, all that kind of stuff. We had a ton of success, but there was one incident where we had a hallucination. And as you might imagine, when that hallucination happened, by the way, it was about deaths in London. It was not like some, big, crazy, wild, controversial thing. But when it happened, there's this sense of like, oh my gosh, we got to stop the presses. We should stop use. No one at HubSpot should be allowed to use AI. And that's not the solution. So what we did, now on the flip side, with our people analytics team, I said, we've all seen an apology where you go like, sorry, yeah, no, don't worry about it, keep moving. That is not what I expect of you. What I expect of you is to be able to explain to an engineer what we're doing to make this right and how they can expect those corrections. And so you have to have integrity in how you operate, but you also have to say to people, this is experimental and we're going to make some mistakes. So if I were at a non-AI company right now, the first thing I would do is do a Friday failure. Like, what did you try with AI that you experimented with that didn't work? Because to your point, part of the problem is everyone is really afraid to jump in the pool because it feels really daunting and it feels like everyone's an expert. So part of what you all can do leading in your organizations is lead by example, to say, I tried one thing, it didn't work. What's a solution someone else has? What's a tool that someone else has used that's been better for this? And I think normalizing that failure is really important.
Yeah.
That really resonates. I also think, as much as everyone's also scared, as much as everyone's scared to be left behind by AI, they're also scared to be seen using AI. And so part of what I love about that is it's actually normalizing, like, hey, this is a part of how we work. It's a part of how we will work. And I'm just going to show you. And so I think for me, what I've seen really interesting since I've worked in AI is people sort of confessing to me. Like, yeah. I want you to know I did use AI on my cover letter. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. I would hope so. Like, did you use Jasper? But I think really starting to have that conversation with people so that we start to actually, we take the clothes off the new emperor and we start to sort of see what's under there. And we ask ourselves, like, what does that look like? And then we can talk about how it doesn't work.
Right.
And like, oh, you put that in your cover letter. I hope you looked at it first. Because every once in a while I talk to a candidate who put something in their cover letter they didn't actually do. And so then you have that conversation of like, what is the human role? What is the technology role? How do we bring that together? But actually starting to just normalize talking about it and not talking about it in the like LinkedIn one sentence at a time, like hype way, but talking about it in the like, oh, that was really uncomfortable and weird and strange, but also I learned and I did more and I'm here for that curiosity to learn from you.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I'm hearing the both of you say, like, this ultimately, and it's been a theme, a red thread through all of our conversations today, like, this is about behaviors, this is about practices that ultimately allow us to be more human. Yeah. So if I can speed up the time in which I understand these are our 5, pressure points, then we can actually discuss, does this work here or not? Is that useful for this person or not? Is it making impact or not? And then hopefully there's a quicker speed to fixing it or continuing the behavior. Speaking of more behaviors and practices, I'm just curious, because the both of you are deep into AI land, like, what are your teams doing? Tell us, please, like, when it comes to, and let's actually start with like employer brand. So I'm hearing about these sort of like Fridays where we're like, let's talk about the feedback of how things are going down. Great, people are confessing a little bit more, because I do think that like work is so tied to many of our identities, and so it can feel really jarring to be like, I'm releasing this part of me, and does it make it seem like I'm less smart or less capable or whatever? But what are your teams doing right now when it comes to how you sort of express your employer brand that is sort of maybe anchored in utilizing AI?
Well, can I embarrass you for a second, Marcella?
Yeah.
You wrote an amazing article a few weeks ago about how women need to sort of be more comfortable using AI.
Yeah.
And this idea that, AI is being shaped by the people who use it, and some of the people who are more reticent to use it might not have the same role in sort of shaping it. And so that's been a very popular article internally. And we actually held an entire women's ERG session just around this article. And really the idea of actually trying to empower people to make their own identity as women at an AI company about sort of telling this story and bringing an evangelism to women outside the company to bring people into the industry. So I thought I would just take it as a moment to embarrass you.
Paid supporter.
I'm a paid supporter.
Kidding.
But for me, that is, it's the experimentation channels. My own team, we did like a hackathon this week. Just to kind of play through how do we use this to tell our story, and we're a smaller organization, we don't have as many resources, so AI is this incredible amplification for us to be able to do the type of work that you can't always do when you don't have large teams and you don't have a ton of resources.
Yeah.
Yes, major agree with that. So from a Harvey perspective, one of the things we're doing is taking all the existing, so we had never done a full-scale employee survey. We're fielding it next week. Pray for us. But before we do, there's been a bunch of informal data, none of which has anything confidential. But I think that data can be super useful. I certainly don't have time to go through every single line of it. And so that's something where what we did was I put in ChatGPT. I was just like, what are some insights? What are some themes? And what are some things that I might miss if I look through this data? And I think those are good call-outs as a place to start. The other thing we did was took all of the questions that our candidates ask and said, okay, what might be missing or what might an additional candidate ask? So if you're thinking about doing, for example, posts and content, please do not start with a blank page, regardless of what tool you use, whether it's Jasper, Claude, you name it. It is so helpful just to get you over that blank page syndrome for anyone in your respective teams. The other thing I will say is we have focused a lot of our attention. I think employer brand should be creative and personal. So we're, as a result, trying to save a lot of time internally on other things. So as an example, if you're someone who does a nurturing campaign for anything, for your employees, all that stuff should be automated. So how do you create time savings in other areas of business so that when you focus on creating an employer brand video, you can do so with a level of personalization? The other thing I would just say is this is a huge opportunity for reverse mentorship. The way that I would go about creating employer brand materials, I'm as old school as it comes. I still miss my old BlackBerry. I still write with a pencil on my notebook. And so as a result, one of the things I try and do is spend time once a week with one of our employees, and I ask, how are you using AI? And the other day, one of our employees, who shall remain nameless, was talking to me about how she uses Grok as a dating coach, which I would not recommend. Please do not tweet that. Please do not LinkedIn that. But the reason that I do it is because the way in which, if I ask them how would I do this with AI, they will give me a different answer than how do you use AI in your personal life. And I highly encourage you to observe young people who are like AI adopters in their natural habitat. So do not ask them how you would do it the way I, a person in your 40s would do it. Instead, ask them how are you interacting with AI on a regular basis? And be willing to ask them naive beginner questions to help you go. So as an example, on our employer brand materials, I was talking about a content site. I won't say the name, but I was talking about it and someone was like, oh, I've never actually heard of that. I'm like, okay, that's good. We were gonna create content for this channel. You've never even interacted with it. And so doing that user research and being willing to reverse mentor and ask your employees for help, I think is super useful. I also think it's a great way to close some of the generational divide. I'm a big believer in fighting that in your workplace. And so to the degree that you can say to people, you have a skill that's really valuable, and oh, by the way, folks who have more experience have a skill in something you don't, bring it together and see what's possible for your customers who live in both those spaces. I think that can be hugely helpful.
So many amazing takeaways, and also I'm like, I need to talk to this person who's using Grok for this.
She's a great time. Highly recommend. She's a riot.
I just want to understand.
It was the most fun half hour I had at work in a while. Yeah.
It's amazing. But okay, so what you're talking about also is just like adoption, and I think that that's a big part of the employer brand, like how a person perceives how your organization, whether they're an AI company or not, is actually engaging with AI is going to impact how they use, don't use, et cetera. And so I'm thinking back to January, we had an AI summit, not at this location, but one of the things we talked about was like meeting your team where they are. And so I'm curious about how you all think about adoption when it comes to learning, or think about AI when it comes to learning. Like not just like, because of course, some people will come and maybe they are an engineer and so they're more familiar. And some people are like, I think this is cool, and I think your company's cool, and you seem like a great place to work, but like they don't really know anything about AI, sort of, or maybe they've dabbled, but they're not like deep down the rabbit hole. So when you think about success in learning how to utilize AI or how to adopt it well for the goals that your organization has, like what does that look like?
Just doing it. I mean, honestly, I think we're so new into understanding the capabilities of this technology that the only real way to really learn it is to get in there doing it. And so what we're talking about is ways to normalize the learning experience, but there just isn't any substitute for learning. And I think what I've seen, we have like an AI experiments channel, and what I've seen most interestingly for me is when somebody posts like, hey, I tried this cool thing, and then somebody comes back and goes, I riffed on it. Like, I built on that. I'm kind of innovating from there. And seeing some of the use cases, like people kind of crossing over streams of what I thought jobs would look like. So, you know, a designer being like, hey, I built a prototype of something. Instead of waiting for it to get queued into an engineering and product development lifecycle, I just sort of wanted to experiment and bring this to life. And then somebody else is like, hey, I took your prototype and I built my own. And neither of them are coders, neither of them are engineers. And so I don't feel like, other than kind of living out loud and learning out loud, I don't feel like there's any substitute for just getting people more comfortable and getting in there and doing it.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I also think if you say you want a beginner's mindset, you have to invest some time and resources into helping people. I think sometimes people say they want a beginner's mindset and someone can't figure it out in an instant, and we're like, see, this person can't do it. That's not fair. And so if you say you want a beginner's mindset, Harvey does legal AI. And so we hire a lot of attorneys, most of whom have never used a Mac before. And so as you might imagine, the good thing about a beginner's mindset is watching a lawyer use a Mac is interesting to say the least. But all kidding aside and all joking aside, I want Harvey to be a place where that's not a weird question to ask. Where if you say, I've done my whole life in a PC, great. We need to be able to welcome you and say, water's warm, let's go. And so we do not do a formal training on how to use a Mac. What we do is a quick Loom. Hey, here are some things that I, a former PC user, learned. We'll do the same with AI tips and tricks. You don't have to do this formal 40-minute training. And in fact, if you do, most of your employees' eyes will glaze over. So the more little things you can do to help people along in addition to those experimentation channels make a big difference. And I think the other thing you have to keep in mind is like lawyers using a Mac for the first time is a great example. These are really smart, bright, capable people. And I think sometimes people that are not currently so adept with AI, people are like, what are we going to do with them? You can do a lot with them if you believe in their potential and give them a small amount of resources and space to experiment. And so one of the things I would also just encourage is if there's an attitude of either like you have it or you don't, how can you help cross that divide within your organization? Because I think we say a lot around experimentation. It doesn't feel safe to experiment for a lot of people. So how can you nudge that along?
Yeah. I want to, as time comes to an end here, like round us out. I think we've said it a few times today. You know, employer brand has gone from like ping pong tables and cold brew on tap and you know, smiling faces supposedly, and then everyone's like, then there's a Times article where like it's awful here, and it happens. We've seen it, but I think the thing that's interesting is like work has now become a place where people do crave a bit more certainty than they ever have before because the world feels so uncertain around them. And knowing that AI contributes to that uncertainty, like we don't know, and it's actually very, to me, it's kind of nice to be like, I don't actually know, and all I can tell you is that I don't know, but like I'm willing to tell you every step of the way as we go. But still, people are like, but tell me something so I can like trust. Tell me something so I can know this is worth it. Tell me something because I've got a family and bills to pay, et cetera, because I'm joining this company. And I'm just curious about how you all are tapering your messaging around the sense of certainty that people traditionally look for in workplaces, given the fact that we live in the most uncertain time we ever have, and the technology that we are dealing with is like, we'll leave here and something else will happen that is big. How do you help people feel like, okay, I can do this?
Well, I think one of the best skills you can have as a leader is to say when you don't know something. So I don't know if I'm giving everyone certainty. I think I'm probably giving them authenticity to say, here's what I don't know. But what I also try to pair that with is, I know that I don't know what this will look like, but let me tell you some of the frameworks that I use. The biggest one I think that has resonated a lot is that of induced demand. That's more roads equals more traffic. So when you plan a city, you assume that if you keep adding roads, the traffic will get better because there'll be more ways to get around. But what happens pretty much every single time is that there's actually more traffic because what you're actually doing is changing the behavior of the humans that are in their homes or deciding to add an extra route.
Yeah.
And so what you end up seeing is there are more cars on the road. And that's what I try to tell people. I say, I don't know what work is going to look like, and I know that. I know I don't know that. But I know that often when we create demand for something, it shifts and changes. And within the organizations that I'm seeing really do this best, I see that people's jobs are evolving in ways that are creative and empowering for them. And I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. Love that.
Great answer. Two things come to mind. One is during times of uncertainty, leaders need to be more visible, not less. So even if you don't know the perfect thing to say, or you think you should skip your weekly email or Loom or town hall, people expect to see you more. And if you don't, they're going to make up the worst version of whatever story you can come up with. So just being visible and being willing to be out there, even when you don't have the answers, is number one. Number two, I'm a big believer. So one of my teammates, Jamie, is here. She knows this. I would love to be able to say to people, this is exactly what's going to happen. And the reality is, not only can I not say that at Harvey, I don't know what's happening in the world, in New York City, and our political environment. It's a chaotic time. And so instead of promising certainty, what I can tell you is the seas might stay choppy, but we're going to make you a great sailor. And so if you want to be a great sailor, this is the best place to go. We're building a great team of sailors. But I'm not going to promise you the water won't be choppy. In fact, it might actually get worse before it gets better. And I'm interested in people who are really good sailors. So if you're interested in learning to sail, or if you are a really good sailor and just want to captain a ship, great, come on board. We got plenty of room for you. But I can't tell you the waters are going to get less choppy. And I think the best people right now are excited about that and energized by that. And that's kind of who we're looking for at Harvey.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's a real undercurrent of resilience in all of this. And we want to support people in increasing their ability to be resilient in a world where we need it more than ever. Thank you so much, Alex and Katie. What a pleasure to have you. We will just thank you.